Zara Alcott jammed a bundle of tulips into a mason jar just as the wind snapped the corner of her tarp loose, sending petals flying across the sidewalk and nearly knocking over her display of sunflowers. "Ugh, seriously," she muttered, reaching to tie it back, her fingers already numb from the cold. "You always seem to be in the middle of a storm when I arrive." Zara turned, brushing her bangs from her eyes, and there he was again, same tailored coat, same sharp jaw, same piercing eyes. Damian O'Connell. He always came around this time, always asked for roses, and always paid in cash, neatly folded bills he handed over without glancing at the price tag. "Maybe you bring the storm," she said, one eyebrow raised. "What's it today? Red or white?" He paused, hands in the pockets of his expensive coat. "Red, always red." She turned to pull the freshest stems from the bucket and wrap them gently in craft paper, tying it with twine. "You buy these every week. Your girlfriend must be drowning in roses." Damian's lips quirked. "You think I'm buying them for someone?" Zara handed over the bouquet and nodded toward the bills he was already slipping into her tip jar. "You're not exactly the daisy type." He took the flowers and looked at her longer than usual. "What if I told you I just like watching you wrap them?" She laughed short, surprised, not quite sure if he was joking. "Then I'd say that's a weird thing to admit to someone you barely know. Then maybe I should change that." He walked off before she could respond, leaving behind the scent of cologne and the echo of his words. Zara stared after him for a second, heart thudding for reasons she didn't want to name. She shook it off. Guys like that didn't hang around flower stalls. They bought roses and disappeared, but Damian came back. Every Friday, he never said much at first, just picked roses, handed over the cash, and left. Always dressed like he'd stepped out of a magazine, always polite, always alone. 2 weeks later, he brought coffee. "For your hands," he said, holding out the to-go cup. "You're always freezing." Zara hesitated, then took it with a small nod. "Thanks, that's thoughtful." He leaned against the edge of her stall, watching her arrange a bouquet. "How long have you been doing this?" 3 years. "My mom started it. She passed last winter. I've been keeping it going." Something shifted in his expression. "She'd be proud. It's beautiful." Zara paused. "Thanks, I mean that. You ever think of getting a shop?" She laughed. "Sure. Right after I win the lottery." Damian looked at her for a long moment, his gaze unreadable. "Maybe you don't need a lottery." She rolled her eyes. "Right, let me guess. You're one of those motivational types, believe in you can achieve." "That kind of thing," he smiled, eyes lighting up like he found her amusing. "Definitely not." He kept coming. Over the next few weeks, they talked more. Not deep stuff, weather, flowers, the weird guy who tried to pay her in coupons, but something was shifting. Zara could feel it. She found herself waiting for him, fixing her hair before he arrived, setting aside the best roses. One Thursday he didn't show. She told herself she didn't notice. But she did. The next day he appeared again, tie loose, shirt sleeves rolled up, looking tired. "You okay?" she asked, handing him the usual. "Had a long night." She hesitated. "You sure you want red today?" He looked at her, and this time his voice was quiet. "I only ever buy them for one person." Zara blinked. "Oh, right, you're you." The word hung in the air between them. She stared at him, confused. "Wait, what?" "I've been buying these for you," he said simply. "Because you smile differently when you're wrapping them. Because you're the only part of my week that feels real." Zara's heart jumped. "Why didn't you just say something?" He shrugged. "Didn't want to freak you out or ruin it." She was quiet for a second. "It's not ruined." His eyes softened. "No," she shook her head. "No." He stepped forward, holding out the roses. "Then let me take you to dinner, something warm, somewhere with real walls." She hesitated. "I don't exactly own clothes for fancy places." "I'll wait while you change." Her brows lifted. "You're serious?" "Very." She looked at the roses in his hand, then up at him. "Okay, but I'm not eating anything with foam on it." Damian smiled. "Deal?" That night, he picked her up in a sleek black car that looked like it cost more than her entire street. He wore a dark suit, no tie, and his hair swept back like he'd just walked out of a movie. She wore a black dress she hadn't touched since her cousin's wedding, paired with boots and a jacket too thin for the cold. He didn't seem to mind. The restaurant had chandeliers and gold leaf menus. He pulled out her chair, ordered wine she couldn't pronounce, and asked about her favorite flowers like it was the most important question in the world. "And yours?" she asked halfway through the meal. His smile was soft. "You actually." Zara nearly choked on her pasta. "That's very smooth. It's not a line." She looked at him across the candlelit table, something in her chest tightening. "You're not what I expected." "Good," he said. "Because I've never met anyone like you." She should have laughed, should have rolled her eyes, but instead she just smiled. He drove her home, walked her to her door, and held her hand longer than necessary. "I'll see you tomorrow," Zara nodded. "You better." He leaned in, kissed her cheek, and whispered, "Good night, flower girl." She closed the door with her heart racing. The next morning she wrapped a single red rose, added a small card, and waited. When Damian arrived, she handed it to him without a word. "He read the card for you." Just because he looked up, eyes warm. "Now we're even," Zara shook her head, grinning. "Not even close." Zara had never been inside a penthouse before, certainly not one perched atop an old-world building overlooking Central Park, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a grand piano that gleamed under soft lighting like something out of a dream. She didn't even realize they were heading there when Damian pulled up outside the building and handed his keys to a valet who seemed to know him by name. "You live here?" she asked, stepping out of the car, her boots clicking softly on the polished marble driveway. "I do," Damian replied, adjusting the cuff of his coat. "I thought we'd have dessert here. The restaurant's pastry chef sends me boxes every Friday. You haven't lived until you've tried his pistachio tart." Zara followed him inside, heart hammering. The elevator ride was silent, except for the soft classical music playing overhead. She could see her reflection in the mirrored wall's wind-tousled hair, a jacket that didn't belong in such surroundings, and eyes that couldn't stop darting toward the man beside her. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped into a space that didn't feel like a home so much as a gallery. Everything was sleek, understated, and curated. She caught sight of a massive abstract painting stretching across one wall and a row of rare books arranged beneath it. The air smelled faintly of bergamot and something clean and expensive. "You weren't kidding," she said, walking slowly toward the window. "This view is insane." Damian set a small box on the coffee table and poured 2 glasses of wine from a bottle he'd retrieved without hesitation. "It's better in the mornings. The light catches the skyline in a way that makes it look almost unreal." She turned to him, taking the glass. "This isn't what I expected." "No," he said as he settled onto the sofa across from her. "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Something colder. Less personal." He laughed softly. "You think this place is personal?" Zara gestured to the books, the faint scent of cedar, the worn leather chair in the corner that looked like someone actually used it. "Yeah, I do." He looked at her, tilting his head slightly. "Most people just notice the price tags. I'm not most people." "No," he said, "you really aren't." There was a long pause while she took a sip of the wine and tried not to feel completely out of place. Damian opened the box and revealed a neat arrangement of pastries, each one delicate and precise. "These look like they belong in a museum," she said, reaching for a tart. "You say that like it's a bad thing." She took a bite and closed her eyes, a small hum of approval escaping. "Okay." "I take it back, that's ridiculous." Damian leaned back, watching her. "You always do that." "Do what?" "Close your eyes when something surprises you." She swallowed, suddenly aware of how closely he was paying attention. "I guess, I don't know. Nobody's ever mentioned it." "I notice a lot," he said, the softness in his voice making her chest tighten. She set the glass down, suddenly feeling the weight of everything, not just the wine or the dessert or the view, but the shift in the air between them. "Why me, Damian?" He didn't flinch. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you could be with anyone. Someone who knows which fork to use at dinners like tonight, someone who actually fits into this world." She gestured toward the room. "I sell flowers on the street." He didn't speak for a moment. Then he stood and walked to the window, hands in his pockets. "You ever feel like you've been living a life that doesn't really belong to you?" Zara frowned. "Sometimes." Yeah, he turned to her, eyes unreadable. I built a company from scratch. I made my first million before I turned 25. People call me brilliant, ruthless, visionary. But most days I feel like I'm just going through the motions. Then why keep doing it? Because it's what I'm supposed to do, because everyone expects me to. He looked at her, his voice low, and then I met you and you didn't care who I was. You just handed me roses like I was anyone. She didn't know what to say, so she said the only thing that felt honest. I didn't know. I know, he said quietly. That's why I kept coming back. She swallowed hard. You could have told me. I didn't want to change anything. I liked the way you looked at me. She stood, crossing the room slowly until they were only a few feet apart. I don't care about your money or your penthouse or your company. But I do care if you're lying to me. I haven't lied. You let me believe you were someone else. I let you believe I was someone who wanted flowers. That was true. She looked at him, trying to make sense of everything. Do you even know what you want from me? He stepped closer, his voice low. Yes, Zara's breath caught. And what is that? You, without the stall, without the roses, just you. She didn't move. That's a lot to ask, I know. And what makes you think I'm ready for that? I don't. He hesitated. But I'm hoping you are. She stared at him, heart pounding. I need time to think, he nodded. Take it. Zara turned and walked to the elevator, her steps slow, her mind racing. When the doors slid shut behind her, she leaned against the mirrored wall and closed her eyes. She wasn't afraid of who he was. She was afraid of what it meant to let herself want him back. Zara didn't go to the stall the next morning. She sat in the tiny kitchen of her apartment, fingers curled around a chipped mug of tea gone cold, staring at the stack of bills she'd been pretending didn't exist. The apartment was quiet aside from the occasional creak of the radiator that never quite worked and the distant hum of traffic below. Her phone buzzed once on the counter, but she didn't move to check it. She needed space. That's what she'd told herself the night before as she'd stepped into the elevator of his world and left behind everything that made sense. But now, with the weight of silence pressing in, it felt less like space and more like a void. She hadn't expected him to find her here. But around mid-afternoon, there was a knock on her door. She opened it slowly, more surprised than anything, and there he was. Damian. No coat, just a navy sweater and jeans that still somehow looked like they cost more than her rent. He had a cardboard box in his hands and a hesitant look in his eyes. I didn't know if you were okay, he said. I'm fine. She stepped aside without saying more and he entered, glancing around her compact space without comment. He set the box on the table. I brought something. Zara crossed her arms. You didn't have to, I know. He lifted the lid. Inside were small pots of herbs, lavender, rosemary, mint, each one carefully planted with a tiny wooden marker, her brow furrowed. You brought me plants. You said your mom started the stall. I figured maybe you'd want something to grow here too. Something that was just yours. Zara stared at the box, caught off guard. These are thoughtful. You don't have to keep them if you don't want to. She ran a fingertip along one of the clay pots. No, I want to. Damian stepped back, hands in his pockets. I wasn't trying to overwhelm you last night. I didn't plan that either. It just felt right. Zara met his gaze. I know you didn't mean to lie, but it still felt like one, like I was the only one in the dark. He nodded once. You're right, and I hated that, but I guess I was selfish. I like being seen the way you saw me. She leaned against the counter, exhaling slowly. It's not just about that. I've worked every day for the past 3 years to hold things together with duct tape and willpower. And then you show up with your perfect suits and your impossible apartment, and you ask me to step into your world like it's easy. I'm not asking you to become someone you're not. I'm asking if there's room for me in your world. She looked up sharply. You'd be okay with that. With the late nights and the early mornings, and the fact that I can't take off on a whim to go to Paris or wherever you probably vacation. I don't want Paris, he said simply. I want coffee with you in the morning and to help you carry heavy buckets when it rains. I want to know what your favorite song is and why you always save the yellow tulips for the last bouquet. Zara blinked. How do you notice that? Because I notice everything you do. And I want to keep noticing. She was quiet for a long moment, then moved to the window where the city stretched far and imperfect outside. I don't know how this works, Damian. We figure it out, together. She turned back to him. I'm not used to people offering me that. He stepped closer, stopping just short of touching her. I'm not most people, Zara searched his face. I don't want to be your charity project. You're not. You're the first real thing I've wanted in years, her breath caught. He continued, voice steady. I've had deals collapse, companies fail, partners betray me. But you're solid, you show up, you fight for what you love. You make things bloom in places no one else sees potential. Zara shook her head, a soft laugh escaping. You're making me sound like some kind of magic gardener. You are, he said, his voice low. You made something out of nothing, and then you made me want to be part of it. She looked at him, her heart doing something wild in her chest. If I say yes. It doesn't mean I stop being me. I wouldn't want you to. Zara stepped forward, her fingers brushing his. Then maybe we try, but slowly. No jet planes. No jet planes, he agreed. Unless you change your mind, she laughed, and it felt real this time, lighter than it had in days. Don't push your luck. He looked around her apartment again, then back at her. Can I take you somewhere tomorrow, low-key, just us? Where? I want to show you something. It's not a restaurant, no suits required, she eyed him. If it's a yacht, I'm walking away. Not a yacht, he promised. Just trust me. I'm working tomorrow, I figured. I'll come help. Her brows lifted. You, in that coat, I've got boots. She grinned despite herself. Fine. But if you drop a bucket, you're buying me lunch. Deal. He leaned down then, slow and careful, and pressed a kiss to her forehead. It was the softest thing. When he left, the apartment didn't feel so quiet anymore. She looked at the herbs on the table, then at the single empty windowsill. One step. That was all she had to take. Just one. The next morning, Damian showed up 10 minutes early wearing jeans, gloves, and a grin that made her forget the cold entirely. The chill had settled early that morning, the kind of cold that clung to the bones and turned breath into smoke. But Zara barely felt it. Her hands were moving on instinct, trimming stems, arranging bundles, tying ribbons, while her thoughts drifted back to the night before, to the way Damian had looked at her like she was the only thing anchoring him to the world. He arrived just past 9, holding 2 paper bags and a thermos tucked under one arm. His coat was dusted with frost, his hair slightly damp from the mist. This time, he didn't hesitate before ducking under the awning and stepping beside her. Before you say anything, he said, I brought breakfast and gloves that actually keep your fingers warm. Zara reached for the thermos first, unscrewed the top, and took a long sip. This is unfair. You're bribing me with warmth. I'm strategic, Damian said, setting the bags down on the crate behind her, and I promise to work. She handed him a pair of shears. You're on bouquet duty, no color clashing. No crushed petals. I feel like you're setting me up to fail. She glanced at him over her shoulder. Try me. They worked in rhythm, and for a while the stall felt like a world separate from the city around it. Zara watched him fumble with ribbon, squint at floral tape, and squish a ranunculus which he attempted to hide behind a daffodil. She didn't say anything, just raised a brow and handed him another. He paused once, fingers brushing hers as he took it. I saw a space yesterday, he said suddenly. Vacant storefront near the East River. It's small, but it faces the morning sun. I thought of you, Zara blinked. For the stall? For whatever you want it to be, she stared at him. You're serious. I don't bring up real estate for fun. She hesitated, an ache blooming low in her chest. I can't just move into a shop overnight. There's permits, inventory, overhead. I'd cover that, Damian said. Not as a handout, as a partnership. Zara stepped back. A partnership, he met her gaze. You'd run it, your name on the door, your flowers, your rules. I'd just help get it off the ground. You're offering me a business. I'm offering you a future. She didn't answer right away. She turned to wrap a bouquet for a customer, pink hyacinths and freesia, arranged with a precision that belied the storm in her chest. When the woman left, Zara finally looked at him. I've never trusted anyone with something this big. You don't have to decide now, Damian said. Just come see it. Zara exhaled slowly. Okay. I'll look. Later that afternoon, he led her to a narrow brick building tucked between a bakery and a tailor. The windows were dusty, but inside, light spilled across the bare floorboards like it belonged there. The space smelled faintly of wood and thyme, and the corner near the front was already lined with electrical outlets perfect for a cooler, she realized. It's quiet, she murmured, stepping forward. But not dead. There's foot traffic from the bakery, Damian said. Plus, the tailor next door's been here since the 80s. People trust her. They'll trust you. She traced a finger along the edge of the dusty window frame. I could build tables here, maybe hang bundles from the beams. He watched her silent. I'd need to keep the stall going for a bit. Ease into it. Whatever you need, he said. I'm not going anywhere. She turned to him, her voice quieter. Why are you doing this? Because I believe in you, he said simply. And because I want to build something with you, not just a shop, a life. Zara's throat tightened. That's a lot to promise. I know, but I'm done living a life that looks perfect but feels hollow. He stepped closer. You made me want something real, something grounded, and I think we could have that if you want it too. The silence between them stretched, but it wasn't empty. It was full of everything unsaid, the grief she'd carried, the weight he'd hidden behind his tailored world, the possibility that maybe, just maybe, they'd found something worth holding on to. She reached for his hand. Let's try. 3 weeks later, the flower stall still stood, but a new sign appeared above the brick storefront. Alcott and Bloom. Inside, the air was warm with the scent of fresh cut stems, and the walls were lined with reclaimed wood shelves holding vases of every shape. A soft playlist drifted through the air, and in the back, Zara unpacked a shipment of wildflowers while Damian adjusted a light fixture he insisted was too dim. You're going to break your neck if you keep climbing things without warning. I'm trying to make the lilies look dramatic, he called down. They're lilies, they don't need help. He jumped down, dusted off his hands, and walked over to her. The opening's going to be good. Zara smiled. It already is. Outside, a customer paused at the window, peering in, then another and another. You ready? Damian asked. Zara nodded. More than I've ever been. He took her hand, their fingers interlacing like they had 100 times before and would 1,000 times more. When the door opened for the first customer, the bell above it chimed, and the city outside kept moving, but inside, a new beginning had already taken root. And this time, it was planted in sunlight. The soft rustle of wrapping paper and the scent of gardenias filled the new shop as Zara tied the last ribbon on a wedding bouquet, her fingers careful, precise. Outside, the sidewalk bustled with late spring chatter tourists with cameras, couples sipping iced lattes, and a violinist playing beneath the bakery awning next door. But inside Alcott and Bloom, the world moved slower, warmer. Damian leaned against the counter beside her, sleeves rolled up, a pencil tucked behind one ear. I finally figured out what's missing from the front window. Zara didn't look up from the bouquet. If you say neon signage, I'm throwing this at you, he chuckled. No, but now that you mention it. She gave him a sideways glance, eyes narrowing without amusement. Damian. Okay, he held up both hands. I'm serious this time. A small bench, something rustic, maybe wrought iron. People could sit, sip coffee, smell the flowers. It's inviting. Her expression softened. That's actually not terrible. High praise, he said, walking around the counter to grab the small notepad they used for ideas. I'll call the guy who did the shelving. He can weld something custom. She watched him scribble notes and couldn't help the tug in her chest. There was something different about him now. Not less powerful, not less polished, just lighter. He still spent half his week running his company. Zara had learned it was a venture capital firm. Something with layers upon layers of partnerships and acquisitions. But he always showed up at the shop by Friday morning, tie ditched, phone barely glanced at. She set the bouquet into its delivery box and dusted her hands off. You're not tempted to go back to it full time, to suits and boardrooms and 18-hour days. He glanced up from the notepad. Tempted, no. Haunted, maybe. Haunted. He walked over, leaning his hip against the table. There's still pressure. Investors, people who need me to be the version of myself I was before. She tilted her head. And who are you now? He looked at her and his voice dipped. Someone who actually breathes. Zara reached for his hand, their fingers threading together without effort. I like this version. He gave her a look one she hadn't seen on him before, quiet, unguarded. So do I. The shop's bell jingled and Zara turned as an older woman entered, her gray scarf fluttering behind her. She made her usual order 3 stems of peonies and a single garden rose, and Zara filled it quickly, chatting lightly about the weather and the art exhibit coming to the library next weekend. After she left, Damian looked at the nearly empty display table. We're going to need another supplier. You're selling out faster every week. I've been thinking about that, Zara said. There's a farm upstate, small but organic. They grow unusual varieties. I'd like to see what they offer. Let's drive out there, he said. Tomorrow. I'll clear my schedule. You don't have to, I want to. He squeezed her hand. Let's make a weekend of it, just us. No orders, no ribbon, no city noise. She hesitated. You sure you can handle no Wi-Fi? If I get twitchy, you can distract me with floral trivia. She laughed, the sound echoing through the shop like music. The drive upstate the next morning was slow and winding, the kind of road trip that invited lazy conversation and shared playlists. They stopped at her roadside diner for pancakes and coffee, and by the time they reached the farm, the sun was high and the air smelled of fresh soil and honeysuckle. The farmer's wife gave them a tour rows of dahlias, delicate foxglove, and a greenhouse filled with the deepest violet irises Zara had ever seen. She took notes, asked questions, bartered gently. Damian stayed close, occasionally brushing her back with his hand or handing her his sunglasses when she squinted against the light. That night, they stayed in a bed and breakfast that overlooked a lake, the kind of place with creaky floors and quilts that smelled like lavender. After dinner, they sat on the dock, feet bare, a bottle of wine between them. Zara leaned into his shoulder. You ever think this would be your life? I never thought I'd want anything this quiet, he said. But now I don't know how I lived without it. She looked up at him, her voice low. You're not going to change your mind, are you? He turned toward her, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. About you? Never. She kissed him then, slow and certain, the lake rippling behind them and the stars rising above. Months passed. The shop grew busier. The bench outside became a favorite spot for couples and early morning readers. Zara hired a part-time assistant from the neighborhood, and Damian added a second delivery van to keep up with demand. One evening, Zara came back from a supplier meeting to find the shop locked early. Confused, she opened the door and stopped. Candles lined the counter, small and flickering. The air was filled with narcissus and soft piano music. Damian stood in the center of the shop wearing the same navy sweater he'd worn the first time he helped her at the stall. He held a small velvet box in his hand. I thought about doing this somewhere extravagant, he said. A rooftop, a ballroom, a private island. But then I remembered this is where you built something out of nothing. This is where I found you, Zara's breath caught. I don't want a life that's loud and hollow. I want this. The quiet, the real, you. He opened the box, revealing a ring with a delicate band that shimmered like morning dew. Will you marry me, flower girl? She didn't speak at first, just stepped forward, tears in her eyes, and wrapped her arms around him. Yes, she whispered. 100 times yes. A year later, they were married in the garden behind the shop. Not a ballroom or penthouse in sight, just friends, family, laughter, and petals falling like confetti. Zara wore a dress she'd sewn tiny flowers into herself. Damian wore a boutonniere made of rosemary and a single white rose. When they danced under the string lights, her head against his chest, she whispered, You still owe me that bench. I had it shipped to the lake house, he said. Our one with the creaky floors and no Wi-Fi, she smiled. Perfect. They kissed, surrounded by the scent of everything they'd grown together, and when the music slowed, neither of them let go.